Hey guys, so I'm going to go over everything that we're talking about in the Zoom meeting today so you can stay on top of it and get your work done on time because the clock is ticking for us for Comp 2. The semester is going to end in about 3 weeks and we still have the paper to write, and we're not going to be able to make up this work after that first week of May. Okay, so you've got to be moving through the steps in a timely fashion. So the first thing that you have due today, I'm going to show you in Google Classroom where I've put this week's work. So the first thing due this week is a thesis statement. It's due in Noodle Tools. I'm going to show you how to do that in just a minute. The second thing that we're working on today is thinking about what research sounds like in the real world. So we're going to be listening to a 60-minute story with Anderson Cooper. And our first step is to think about how he structures that story for 60 minutes. We'll go back into that story on Wednesday and we'll look at the moves he's making as a writer. When we've talked about authorizing, illustrating, extending, and countering, we're going to look at signal phrases that he uses so we can create a document, a collaborative document, so we can all have some phrases at our fingertips as we write. And then the other thing that we're doing this week is your outline for your paper. Your outline is going to be due in Noodle Tools by Wednesday. So let's take a look at a thesis statement. So when I worked on my thesis statement today, I went back to my project proposal. And when we wrote our project proposal, I had you write your topic in a complete sentence or two. This is basically a working thesis. What do I think I'm going to be writing about before I do the research? Well, after I've done all the research and I've read about my topic, true crime, I have a much more nuanced understanding of my topic and my question, especially because my questions took me into that complexity. Okay. So where my initial topic statement was watching true crime television impacts our perception of individuals accused of a crime and our perception of the criminal justice system, that was my topic that I had before I researched. Remember, I watched true crime and this is what I was thinking before I started doing the reading. So then to prepare to write my thesis statement, there's a couple things that you could do. You could type right here to draft it, right? You could pop down and draft it. You could highlight this and you could do a comment and you could draft a thesis in a comment, but I like my handy dandy notebook. I like to handwrite. It frees me a bit. So right here is me working through my thesis statement. After I've read and I've taken notes, now what do I say? So I want your thesis statement to be posted in Noodle Tools. So when I go to my project for true crime and I'm in my dashboard, there's a space right here for me to type my thesis, my main claim, my hypothesis. And so my thesis has changed from my original topic to something that's more nuanced. And in fact, it's a couple of sentences long. My thesis statement right now for my paper is audiences are drawn to true crime for entertainment and because it allows armchair detectives to use their own powers of reason to examine evidence and solve a crime. However, true crime can also expose perceived corruption in our justice system, leading to distrust in the very institutions we hope will protect us. So I have a pretty complex thesis statement to examine in my paper, right? One, the history of true crime and its entertainment value and what it does for us as viewers. But on the other hand, there's this more serious aspect to it, which is about how it affects our perception of the world that we live in and the very institutions in our government, like the justice system, that we hold dear. I can only do that because I've read a lot, okay? And I understand those nuances because I've listened to those voices. So that is due on Tuesday. The second thing that we're doing today is looking at research in journalism. So when you go to this assignment, examine research in journalism, and we go to the instructions, what we're doing together in Zoom is listening to a 60-minute story. It's a little over 13 minutes. It's about brain hacking. And Anderson Cooper is the journalist who's doing this story. It is a few years old, but I still think it's really, really relevant. And it's a great example of the moves we make in research. So the first thing I want you to think about are what do you notice he's doing as a researcher that we have already done? one thing he does is he asks really good questions. As he learns something, he asks a follow-up question. And then as he learns something more, he asks another follow-up question. So that's all the stuff that we've been doing in our reading, our researching, and our note-taking. Okay. And it's also a move that we're going to continue to make as we write our paper. I know I said before that often what happens to me when I'm writing a paper is as I'm writing, my writing raises a new question. And one of my questions is often, am I correct here? If I'm not sure, I'm going to go back and do some more reading, right? Until I get an answer. The focus for today, though, is thinking about how Anderson Cooper structures this story or this news story, right? It's his research paper. And I want you to think about the kernel essays that we've thought about. Let me see if I can find one. I think I have it open here, maybe. Yep. So when I talk about kernel essays, this is what I'm talking about. These maps for the structures of our paper that we've looked at before. And in our previous paper, we were looking at lots of different stories, and I had those maps on the board. One about the Joker from the review about the Joker was a really good example. And we also had one sketched out for that article about revenge. So what I want you to understand is there are lots of ways that we can organize our paper. There is not one way, but we want to be very intentional and specific in how we organize, specific to our topic and our purpose, right? It should match that. We just don't want to take a structure that exists in the world and force our writing into it. So as you watch this 60-minute story from Anderson Cooper right here, I want you to sketch out his structure, create a map for how that argument or that essay is organized, okay? And if you're in Zoom with me, we're going to do that together. If you need a transcript, there's a PDF transcript of brain hacking here. It is not written the way our research papers are going to be written. It's written like a transcript, like each voice that speaks, but we're still going to be able to think about how the whole story moves structurally. And then we're going to go back in on Wednesday and look specifically at the language moves that he makes, specifically at authorizing, illustrating, extending, and countering. And we'll create a document for ourselves that'll be a resource as we write our paper. Okay, I hope I see you in a Zoom meeting this week. If not, these videos, I'll make some videos here to support you as you move on through the next steps.